So tonight we are having Anne Twomey, who was one of on the board of TDC, Claire Brown, and Liz Connor. Liz, I knew her when she was this, she was nothing. She was like, where am I going? So, what's book? No. So, Liz Connor is art director of Grand Central Publishing. She started in book jacket design straight out of college, thanks to Radcliffe Publishing Program. And then she was an assistant of art director of William Morrow. What was his name? Richard Aquan, yes, who is still there. And with the exception of a 2-year absence, spending her earning her MFA in visual communication from the School of Art Institute in Chicago, she has remained in the field doing time, that's a good word, yes, at HarperCollins, Penguin, St. Martin, until she was free by Hachette. But she has been lucky enough to work at Grand Central Publishing since June 2008, and by far her longest gig to date. Claire Brown, she started as an executive assistant in the Warner Book Art Department in 1999. The job evolved into her current role as an art director in the Grand Central Publishing Art Department, and over her 17-year career, she has had the privilege of working with many great visual artists, art directors, writers, editors, and is proud to be part of a team that has won so many awards and created so many best-selling books. And now, Anne Twomey, who was, as I said, part of the board of TDC, and who gave us a lot of money for this exhibit. After 35 years in the book publishing industry, she considered her position as creative director of Grand Central Publishing Art Department to be the role of a lifetime, yes. And she has allowed her to best pursue her goal of creating and fostering award-winning design community. Like the title says, sometimes design takes a village. So here you have.
Can you hear me? Am I doing this? Whoops. Oh. Nope. Okay, we have to adjust that. My height. Okay.
I think just.
Okay.
Yes. That's good.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming, everyone. This is really exciting because we're a community, and a lot of people who are here tonight contributed to this. I started at Warner Books 12 years ago. And I inherited a good team, and some of that shifted. And
I don't know how to get out.
Whoops.
I'm sorry, Anne.
Yeah, sure.
I have trouble getting out of this. My tech is not here tonight, guys. So forgive me. I just got to get out of this. Please get out of it. No. No.
Hey, Liz? No, you were looking at it.
Adam?
What about on the upper right?
Yeah.
Where do you see it?
Upper right.
Oh, that's it. I need to get out of that. Yes?
Almost hit the red again. There you go.
Okay, all right, now.
Full screen?
Yeah,
Now
wait.
you can hit play.
I know. That much I know.
No, I barely.
Right there.
Okay. Yay! So when I started this job, we were Warner Books, and we were a group of people, and I think maybe I was hired to help elevate it a little bit. So actually, I'm going to talk about using a lot of people to do that because you want to expand your resources. You have that opportunity when you're creative director, and work with people who you have and try to elevate that. But also, I think the real opportunity and the inspiration for Grand Central was actually another imprint that came a year earlier, and that was 12 books. So I think I was there about almost 2 years, and we had just let go of this Christian book publisher that we weren't also excited about anyway. And my publisher, I wasn't about a lot of territory. It was not the way I am, but my publisher said, well, we're going to have another imprint, Anne, and it's going to be more, review-driven, and it's going to be a lot of quality narrative nonfiction. I'm like, wow, that's my favorite kind of books. like ones my friends read and stuff. So she mentioned that maybe, well, we didn't have the budget, whatever, but I could have an art director. And I said, well, no, I'm going to art direct it. So this felt like the opportunity of lifetime for me. And I had a very, very clear idea about what I wanted to do with 12. You know, we could all look around and we could see great stuff being done by people. But as Liz said about me, I came across my love of modern design, honestly, because I grew up with it. You know, I grew up in the 60s, and it was, and I'm going to say the early 60s, not, you know, the hippie era, when everything was, you know, a British invasion with go-go boots and mod things, and Life magazine was big format, and I remember, like, doing a decoupage in my basement of all this art, and like George Lois was around. And before I knew the names of designers, it was just happening all around me, and it's just etched in my memory. And you got a little older, my parents were taking me to museums, and, you know, I was being introduced to pop art. And so anyway, that was my honest. So when we started, it incubated for about 6 months, and the first book was Boomsday. And, you know, I started working on it, but, you know, I'm not that good an illustrator, so all this stuff. So I had admired Will Staley's work, and I called him, and the great thing about this was it's over there someplace. It has a die cut, and I used to do that in paperbacks, and so, you know, they promised me that small children in Mexico wouldn't do it, but we got it done. And even my, anyway, I love this, and he did this tip in. This was, I think it bled off the page a little bit. It was foil, and it was pretty easy. And it sold really well, mainly because I think the publicist had Al Sharpton debate with Christopher Hitchens. But Christopher Hitchens really liked it. And, you know, the agent was like, could you make God bigger and Great small? Anyway. This one, I had my early contributors to 12. You know, I had considered the list, and this is Roberto. Yeah. Yes. And, you know, again, Eric, this sold very well, and I think Denmark might have been one of the happiest places in this book too. It recently was. Then this is, you know, Henry Yee designed this for us. But what was really interesting was the publisher, Jonathan Karp, suggested that Columbine was such a loaded word that maybe we could take the author's name off the cover. And so the author agreed, Dave Cullen. And I actually thought maybe there would be no imagery. And, you know, at some point I was taking on 12, but I needed help. And I didn't give it out to the whole group because I didn't want it to look like Warner Books. But Flag Tanuzi kind of got it, so he was kicking in at first. And so he hired Henry to do this. And, you know, what can I say? It's been selling for years. But the author kind of just stepped in recently and made some changes. Okay. This one, you know, we did a lot of covers, and then, you know, just hit me apples and oranges, and that was simple and stuff like that. And I think I tried it on, you know, beige, and I tried it on green, but it looked like a farmer's market. And, you know, the author was blind. So the author asked me to, you know, put it on green. So that was odd. But anyway, we went with the blue. I told her I tried the green. Another one that Henry did, and trust me, a lot of people contributed to this one, but this one just really worked. It really worked. This one, you know, I decided to do some really bad type that looked like, you know, on a soy packet, because I've just seen so many other types of, you know, the chopsticks and the, you know, the takeout box. And, you know, of course, I went to sales conference and like, well, why don't you do a takeout box? This is one of my favorites. I love when you really get surprised. I asked Will Staley again to work on this, and I was told by the author that he didn't want it to look too Victorian. He wanted a pipe. He wanted a hat. Well, I just sent the email to Will, and I said, don't take him too seriously. But he came up with this. How brilliant is this? And this spot of blood is actually a die cut, which leads to this. Went back in the day when we could do die cuts. This one I just love, because I love when just type does things. This is Joel Holland. This is Flag. Again, I just love when type does stuff. It's strong. This is Unreal Fate. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm sounding like I'm partial to Will Staley, but I wanted to bring him back again. And, he did a lot of stuff, and then it was like, well, this is a half-baked, and I just nearly cried. Almost everyone cried when they saw this. This is beautiful, and now I'm going to have to go to my notes because I didn't want to forget. Flag designed this, and the photographer was Sebastian Younger's colleague, and they had Tim Hetherington.
Yeah.
They went to Afghanistan together, and unfortunately, Tim was killed about a year later. So, but it's a very moving book because it's really a lot about how men, what they call courage, when they can face in war. He says the bonding is so deep, it's really just love. Isn't this sweet? Eric Baker designed this, but we were suffering with the imagery, and my late friend Laura Wiss did a search for me, and in the search this showed up, and it was just so perfect. What is old, but it's still sweet? Well, it looks old. This one, I was up in Hudson, New York, and was struggling with this, and the author had, he went to Harvard, he had a lot of input. And I was up in Hudson, New York, and I walked into this antique store. And, it was around the time the tablet had just come out. And I saw this real tablet and said, and I said, oh, my God, this is the perfect, because this is all online education. But I had originally had it being charged, and he got rid of that. But I thought it was a little stronger with the charging device. And this one I designed. It was a interesting book about a genius monkey, and it's really thick, and I was halfway through it, and I'm saying, okay, so I get, he said, where does he excel in mathematics? What? He goes, no, he becomes a painter. And I have a personal friend that did these series of paintings of monkeys, and so I integrated this monkey with my friend's painting, and we put in the peach, because he does have a show, and he becomes a famous painter. This is Catherine Castellino's, and again, where's my note? Catherine, who did this? Here we go. Alex Robbins. But I love this. I should show it next to God Is Not Great. It's just great. Here's the thing. I should have said earlier. So 12 was my baby, but then it comes to a point where it starts to take off and you feel like it's the look you wanted to have. And I had an agenda. And I told Jamie Rabb, when these books, we also had a unique opportunity here. We were a small group. It was Jonathan Karp, the publisher, and Carrie Goldstein was the publicist, and me, the art director. And we basically did what we wanted. We had no interference from sales, basically at all. So it was a really unique opportunity. But I told Jamie Rabb, our publisher, I said, when this starts to sell, which it did right out the gate, I said, I'm going to move that aesthetic over to, now we had Grand Central at this point. We were going to be launching Grand Central. So at some point, when that was happening, I handed over the torch to Catherine because I thought she was up for it and she would have enjoyed the challenge, which she did. I like this piece because it's just a funny story. The Capitol is made out of origami, and I commissioned it from this guy, Juan Park, who does origami in Hawaii, and he was going to ship it to Sisters Oregon, where Face Out Studios is, but then it was too unwieldy, so he photographed it and sent. But then Face Out did this, and the book did very well. So just recently, they asked Catherine to repackage it, and we wound up looking at what Face Out did, a few years earlier, and did the next one because they're both very strong. This one, well, being the boomer in the room, I said I do want to work on this because I'm actually probably one of the few people that remembers the event, and this there was a real poster out there, you know, that he was wanted for treason. When I started Googling, it just blew my mind. And so it's kind of a powerful cover, and we were able to go with it. One of the ways legally I was able to go with it is our lawyer said, well, I purchased these two pictures that were like the original poster, and you know, dummied it up to be very similar, but made some changes for my design, so it was not using this thing where we didn't know who the credit was for. This one I did, and I remember reading it about 2.5 years ago when my daughter was packing to move to Berlin. And I wanted to do it because I'm very familiar with Munich Airport. And it's about a woman who starves to death in Berlin. So that was brave of me. And this is Catherine's new take on a bestseller that they reintroduced in 12 imprints. And I love this one. This is Rex Bonanelli, and Catherine, again, commissioned this one. Stunning. And this one, this is Nick Massani, Massani, right? Yeah, Massani. And, you know, he did this twice. It was a little bit more ornate, and Catherine fought to have it just redone a little clearer so that we could still have that beautiful type. And this is also Catherine, what she did. She bought one of those home movie titling sets or whatever, and did this. We were all jealous. Then we all wanted to go out and buy one. And this last one is by Jared Taylor. Jared's been the art director of 12 books since the end of November. And he's jumping in real quickly and, again, passing on this, what I think is a really nice opportunity. And now I'm going to quickly, because I'm supposed to talk about, and this last one. Don't you love this? This is Jared and Ross McDonald. Now I'll talk about GCP real quickly. So we had to rebrand, and because we were being sold by Time Warner, and we looked at some branding companies, and we just deemed them. So our publicist hired somebody, and I hired a graphic designer, and I hired Eric Baker, who Roberto recommended, and Robin Schiff. And so here's some of the things that he came up with. This one particularly here, that was the one. And then our legal said, it looks too much like the Grand Central logo, which I just couldn't see because it's Victorian ornate, but it does have a C and the G. So we went with that. This was just, we do a lot of franchise authors, and I wouldn't call this one of our bigger franchise authors, but I really liked working on these. And the first book did well, became a movie. There was a third book. I won't show it. But there was a second book, rather. The third book in a series, it's basically the history of the USSR. I told them, listen, give me a title with a number in it. And so it worked a little better. And this is Tom Rob Smith. Again, this was one offshot. And, I was looking at, movie posters, and I was thinking more, less Hitchcock, more Ingmar Bergman. And when he saw this, he said, wow, this looks like a movie poster from the 60s. So obviously that worked. This is one of my favorite all-time covers, especially the production. It's over there. So it's kind of a dream to work with Steve Martin. But I didn't have much time. And I spoke earlier about growing up and going to museums and seeing Rauschenberg and Robert Indiana and all these people. There was this very short email between Steve Martin through the editor, and Ed Ruscha was just kind of floating there. But I didn't want to do Ed Ruscha. I wanted to do, type as art. This novel is about the art world in the 90s. And I originally wanted to do a die cut, laser die cutting, to a painting in the background to be determined. But it was a little too costly, and mostly we couldn't go back. And then I went to the museums. I looked at stuff again. I was even had canvases in my basement. I was going to paint this myself. I had tape. I was all set, and it was a nightmare. So I got a glass of wine and went on the computer, and the next day I called Darren Booth. I had seen his stuff, and he whipped this out pretty quickly. And I really have to thank my production department because they found me this stock that looked like canvas, like uncoated and coated, and it's really just the case stuff. And they got this extra shiny varnish on the type, so it looked like it really looked like linseed oil or something like that. So, and then of course I got to meet Steve Martin. He took my hands, both in his hands, and told me that it was truly an object of beauty. And I went into a soliloquy, but I was floating somewhere. I was so thrilled. It was the highlight of my life. So I told you we have franchise authors, and this is a cover that Flag did 20 years ago, I think, yeah, because we're celebrating the anniversary. To much success and continuing success. Over, I don't know, maybe 20 more books. It's funny because he's one of the few males on our team, but, you know, maybe there's a reason. And recently, his agent and our publisher felt that we should repackage, and both Flag and I thought that Claire Brown would be the perfect person to do it. And so now she has a job of repackaging all of them, but this was the first book that came out with the new packaging. Yeah, and the font. What's the font, Claire? It was by James Montalbano. What?
B. Sands.
B. Sands. And this is another one by Henry. It's just a stunning cover. It's a really good book too, and it did very well. Mm-hmm. But he originally designed it just type. And it just got so much resistance. I don't know why, you know, the female. So it was suggested there be a female. And Henry suggested, why don't we put the author? So we photographed the author. This is one of my favorites. I wanted to work on this. But I had this idea that I'd put a chicken with these surgery lines on it. And then the author emailed the editor, said, anything but a chicken. So I said, okay, Liz, you work on it. And she hired Oliver Monday, and he did this. It just makes me laugh, and it's so clean, and it's just wonderful. And then there's Amanda Palmer. A lot of people worked on this. Christine Foltzer, Liz, me, Chip Kidd. We went through a lot with Amanda, and at one point she discovered that she liked this stuff painted on her from a shoot we did with Jeff Spears, but she went back and got, what's it, Amato? Alan Amato, yeah. A really nice guy, by the way, in California. And he was working on an art project with body painting, and he was all excited to do this with Amanda for, like, no budget. And then Liz and I were playing tag, but by the time the photo shoot was really good, it came in, and we were both straggling, going on vacations. And in the end, Liz, you know, pulled this together. And I think it's stunning. And then, of course, there's Bay. I started to work on this one just, you know, maybe for about a half hour. And I go, what am I doing? Why aren't you just calling Evan Gaffney? Because you know he's just going to, like, love working on this. And I think he did a stunning job. And this was a favorite. You know, again, I told you I grew up at a certain age. My father was an engineer. He was one of the engineers that worked on the launching pad of the lunar module. So I got excited about this. And the pictures were from Life magazine. But the one we picked, or they couldn't find the original of this one, so it already had the mezzotint in it. But I think that gave it a nice quality. And Biz Stone. Here I'm going to get into this thing where we got into business books, which was kind of an interesting thing. It went through more than I thought. And Chris Silas Neal, it's pretty much the integrity of his design. But then, you know, Chris had done a nice portrait of him, and then, you know, he didn't want the drawing, and it went back and forth. But in the end, I like it. This one's great. I didn't forget the title without their permission. So we just tried. Oliver Monday came up with this, and we thought it was genius, and we decided to go with it. We think it didn't perform as well, and we did something different or similar with the title on it for trade paperback, but it's pretty brilliant. And then here's a case. There was the summer that I was working with these big businesses. This is the Container Store. It'll be Zillow and Google. And it was arduous because I felt like we had a brand, and they think that they have a brand. And nowadays in the business sector, like no matter how small a business you have, you're a business author, you've got a web designer. It's like you have a lawyer on a retainer. So they want their person, to design it, and they don't know. So these people came in and they were like, oh, meetings and meetings, and they want this and this. But Flag was working, and, in the end they said, oh, we like what you did better. That was nice. Not so much the story here. I hired Ben Weissman. I thought this was, that there was like 10 covers, but you can see they're really pretty great. No way. 2 editors. Went through 2 editors, like, no way. They had to do it. So that's like the title up there. This looks like a web design or something. I don't know, a brochure. And the book tanked. This one, somehow we always stayed with the same concept, but my marketing director had this concept, what should be a search window. So I whipped something up for a sales conference, and people loved it. And I thought, you know what, I'll hire Oliver. I think he'll do a slightly better job in some, and he did. But Google was no way. They're like, we want our maestros to do this. And, so I told my editor, I said, fine, let them. I said, I'm sure they've got some really great designers. They're Google. I said, but just remind them this isn't a web page and this isn't a brochure. This is more akin to packaging. So they needed, 4 weeks or whatever. But when they came in, they were very clever. There were like 10 designs. The first 2 really worked for me. This one, the second was, the one I totally wanted. And the thing is, why I like this one so much also, sales had said, well, can we get Google on the cover other than in the title? I'm like, I don't know. But, Google can bastardize their name and do that. I can't. So I thought that was so brilliant. And I think it might be here, when you open it. So that was a win for them. And I think it worked, win for everyone. Now this one, oh my God, here you get to see. It already went into. This is a book that's coming up that we're doing with the MIT Media Lab, and of course I had to ask Michael Beirut to do it, and he said, of course, I'd love to. And so he and Ian Fay, they worked up 28 covers. It's still indecisive what we're going with, but I'll just play it one more time. And okay, that's so then this is the other big book we're having coming up. It's a really great read. I recommend this one. But I got a lot of flack for this cover. Oh, it's too light. I can't see it. No one's going to read it. Why don't you put a sunset? And then this is another really big book we help us go through the year. And this is head case design through
Melcher.
Melcher, with the packagers. And we had pre-orders like we've never seen, and big decisions to make about printing overseas. And get your copy soon. Okay, now I'd like to introduce Claire Brown for Life and Style.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, Life and Style is our publishing category for wellness, beauty, fashion, and cooking, diet and fitness, inspiration, self-help. How do I?
Narrow down.
Here we go. Oh, okay. Those are our catalog covers. And this is a book about pie, designed by Laura Polisi, and photography by Gentle and Hires. And we're going to see more of them. They're really good. We really like working with them. Okay. This is Buvette, designed by Gary Tooth and Gentle and Hires. And this wasn't a really great project to work on because the photography was spectacular, and we had a lot of options for the cover shot. And then the branding was done by Max Pagla. Sorry, and he did an amazing job with letterpress menus and all kinds of, beautiful kind of crafty stuff done already. So it kind of just is an amazingly beautiful book that just put itself together when all this great stuff just came our way. It's a craft cocktail book, again by Laura Polisi, and photography by Daniel Krieger. Very quick design process. It did very well in anthropology. It was the centerpiece in their glassware section. Oh gosh, okay. This is Asian American, designed by Elizabeth Connor, and Joel Holland did the typography. William Hereford did the photography. This is not for me, this book. It's he wanted the original photo. He was literally eating out of a garbage can, or he was sitting in the gutter eating out of a garbage can. And I couldn't believe that we were actually entertaining the idea, but I guess we did. But we got him to reshoot it so he was not so close to the garbage can, just sort of, and standing up, not in the gutter. And it's actually really lovely. It's really beautiful. He had eloped, so it was hard to get him to focus. But once he got back and he focused, and
Plus, we had to shoot at 8 o'clock in the morning in Brooklyn.
Yes.
To get the sunrise.
Yes, and Liz made it to the shoot because she was in
I was on
British time. Right. She came from the airport to her. Yeah. Yeah. So that did well. SUJA juice solution was designed by Liz Honker-Camp, who has another name coming. What's your new name to be?
It's going to be Ford.
Ford. And this is our take on the juice cleanse craze. They wanted it to be an anti-cleanse book, more of a lifestyle book and not a diet book. And there was a photographer and a packager, but they just liked what Lisa did, so that was that. Ellen, of course, was done by Doug Tershin, who is a total pro, unsurprisingly, and he basically did the whole thing. And Ellen had a great vision for what she wanted, and she took everything was taken into consideration, and she wanted everything to be very elegant, and it just kind of came out that way. This is fun. It's Timeless Beauty. To me, the most interesting thing about this is that she really looks like that. There's very little retouching done. The second choice, well, the other cover we almost went with, which was my first choice, she was actually on the beach in a two-piece bikini. It was taken by her friend, just like, some day out on the beach. And she's that beautiful. And but unlike Ellen, she didn't really have a vision. She had many, many visions that were kind of unpractical, and there's a lot of kind of schizophrenic craziness and redoing. But Bonnie Segler from 8.5 Design, she's tough. She's a tough lady, and she's very focused, and she kept Christy in line, and it got done. It got done. Oh, again, Lisa. It's Always Hungry, which I think is a bestseller right now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have cookies for it. Literally, Lisa describes this as a labor of love.
It was Gabrielle in the end.
Yeah, I'm getting to Gabrielle. There's hundreds of covers done for this, and it was still being worked on until we were basically at the point of missing our bound book date. Right, we ran out of time and they had to make a decision. The title kept changing, and then the authors are scientists, so they're very literal in their thinking. We photographed Cheetos and raw nuts, and Lisa had a design breakthrough, and she did a French fry, a single French fry, like in a container, like a big container in a single French fry, and it was exciting because it was like a breakthrough for her. But it got rejected. And I told her it was going to. I said, when you feel like it's the one that there's no way it's going to get rejected. So then we called Gabrielle Wilson, and she came up with an illustration of a nutrition table, right? And this is what this. And then I guess at the same time, just sort of coincidentally, a magazine had done an article about this author and had done the same thing, a nutrition table. So we knew that this was the way to go. But then, of course, it was where to put the nuts. We had Herman Estevez photograph it, and then I think Flag and Lisa spent, up until they printed it, just moving the little nuts around all over the place. I think it was the author that was picky about the nuts, right? The placement of the nuts. Yeah. This one I just like. It's Meet Paris Oyster. It's just a little gift book for foodies. Kathleen Lynch, who's here tonight, did the cover. And I hired her because I love her aesthetic. But it turns out that her husband raises oysters or harvests oysters on Shelter Island. So we were able to tell the author that. And it really helped in the approval process. She's really picky, and she felt taken care of with that little knowledge. So that was good. Oh, right. So this is a saga. So we're doing the new Mari Batali book. This is work in progress. Douglas Riccardi submitted all these designs, which were rejected by our sales and marketing department. They wanted a photo of Mario on the cover and an American theme. So Flag came up with this, which everyone seemed really happy with. This is sort of just for placement, and it sat around for about a year where we just knew that this was what we were going to do for this. And then right about the time it had to be done, and Flag spent a lot of money doing a photo shoot to recreate this. We showed it again, and the sales department was deeply disturbed about the cover. They felt it needed to be a more beautiful and less commercial look, based on comments at a meeting that we weren't invited to. I said, we walked out of the meeting, I was like, you would think that he had like swastikas on his head, or like, I don't know, it was like so like insane, their reaction. They were so upset. So they said, we're gonna have a heart attack if you bring that to the sales meeting. So Flag hired Gail Anderson and Joe Newton, and they came up with this, which everybody was happy with, in-house, and Mario was happy with, but Barnes & Noble hates. They said it's a big fail, the ugliest cover, doesn't relate anything about American cooking, colors are terrible, flat, washed out. Why can't we do something similar to Farm and Table Cookbook, which is the one that Flag did, the first one. So that's where we're at. We don't know what's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. And then this is Gwyneth. What I really like about her cookbooks are is that it's not your typical layout of a recipe and then a photo of the cooked food you're going to prepare. Her books kind of they have a narrative and tell a story about beautiful places, beautiful people sharing amazing food. It's more aspirational than practical, but the recipes are not that complicated. You can do it, so it's kind of like a fantasy that I like. Anyway, that's it. That's Life in Style. Thanks.
I'm going to see if pressing this minimize button makes that little menu go away. Oh, wait. I don't even see I can't see a cursor, so I'm just going to leave it. All right. Anne asked me to talk. Oh, my God, I can't see any of you. Anne asked me to talk about humor, and I think basically that meant books that fell into the humor category and or books written by comedians. But I want to start out by talking a little more generally about humor in book design. The first book that I was handed was a book called Undress Me in the Temple of Heaven. It had been kicking around the department a while, and I was new. I wanted to make a good impression, so I actually read it because the manuscript was in. It was an amazing book about two brown grads who decide, as brown grads will, to forego getting jobs, and instead they're going to travel around the world together, these two women who are only sort of friends. They don't know each other that well. And they decide to start in communist China that has only just opened its doors to tourists. No problem. They're independent women. They'll get it done. So they get there, and it starts out being sort of funny. It's a lot of fish out of water stories. They can't buy food because they don't know how to ask for it. They want a hostel room. That's all they want, but it's filled with cockroaches, language barriers. It's a mess. But as this Amazon reviewer wrote, small, seemingly insignificant things begin happening to Gilman and her traveling partner. As patterns emerge, the story begins to take on threatening, even malevolent overtones, and the pace quickens. What began as two innocent and idealistic girls taking an around-the-world trip turns into an uncontrolled descent into chaos, fear, and personal destruction. So, descent into chaos, fear, and personal destruction. Made a real impression on me, and I said as much to the editor and the publisher, and they said, "Great, can you make it look like these?" Because these were the author's two previous books, the one described as irreverent and hip, the second as a poignant and funny collection of coming-of-age tales. And she had had success with these covers, so I understand that their desire was to, continue with this because it would work. But it felt to me like we were lying somehow, like we weren't telling the story that was there. And all of my moody aesthetic comps. My favorite was a naked woman from the back, Natch, walking into a river with the gumdrop mountains of Guilin in the background. There was fog rolling in. Those all got scrapped for this little beauty. It wasn't the worst, but I was sad to have to do it. Like I said, it didn't feel like it told the story to me. And in fact, I came across another review in Goodreads, which I was very appreciative of. Jen in Philadelphia wrote, "I picked this up from the free book pile at my job. The cover and title led me to believe that I was letting myself in for a self-indulgent remembrance of the author's various sexual escapades while backpacking around the world. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that it was nothing of the sort, but a rather more chilling and compelling tale." Thank you, Jen in Philadelphia. So even her review makes it clear that, I was glad that she got past the cover, but she recognized too that it was a disconnect. It didn't quite fit. And I understand they do it because it already works and they think they can just keep it working that way. But I feel like if you don't let the person evolve, the author, artist, whoever it is, then Mark Wahlberg would still be releasing hip-hop albums. And we don't want that. You gotta understand that things move forward, that progress is, God willing, made. So for those of you who haven't already learned this lesson, I think most of you already have, you gotta be ready to embrace the absurd. Because sometimes the higher-ups, publisher, the author's spouse, or God save us, the sales department, are going to compel us to do things that we don't want to do. They don't make sense. You can make your arguments, you can fight the good fight, but if in the end you got to do it and you don't like it, you can always leave your name off it. Then there's some that you're happy to put your name on. This was, despite the fact that it's got this founding father and the axe, and it was actually a well-researched factual history, oddly enough, you kind of can't look at it and not think humor. So this was actually a good case study. The process went very quickly. I put a bunch of comps together with all the photographs. There's about 4 of Lincoln that I could find. I sort of cobbled it together. They liked it. I hired Scott Nobles because the original photo only went down to the knees, so we needed to fill it in. The idea was the front cover would provoke, and the back cover would be a sort of punchline. So Scott Nobles brought his friend Paul over to stand in as from the knees down and from the back Abraham Lincoln. And pop-up video fun fact, he is also the disembodied vampire head. That's all one guy. It was my first bestseller, I think. The first one I remember, like I could mention it and people had heard of it. And I was really happy with the final product. I think it also might have been what earned me a reputation for giving good funny, like doing good on the humor books. Then the next one was a mess from the start. It wasn't really a mess. The book, I think, on its own was fine, but everything else was a mess. The title at the time was We Three Kings. There was no reading line, nothing to explain what it was about. It was essentially a retelling of the story about the 3 wise men, only they were all hoodlums and outlaws, and they were just on the lam. But so it started out, so we have a title that doesn't say anything, no reading line. It's based on a Bible story, so people who don't like Bible stories aren't going to read it, and people who like the Bible might think it's sacrilegious and they're turned off by it, so that's divisive. And as Anne kept pointing out, it was a Christmas book that they decided to publish at Easter. And what editorial said to me was, just do what you did for Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, without actually thinking about that. And like I say, you know, I loved working on that book, but I'm also the genius who put a bloodied, axe-wielding, head-toting Abraham Lincoln on a book called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It was kind of a gimme. It was a little bit obvious. So I explained their different approaches. I managed to convince them that we didn't want to make it look exactly alike, that was a sort of historical, heavy tome, and this was much more like a sword and sandal epic. It was much more like an Indiana Jones movie, and the Indiana Jones idea actually made sense to the editor. So we wanted to do, on the left here, a sort of Drew Struzan-esque Star Wars Indiana Jones movie poster, where you've got a bunch of scenarios happening, you see the characters. And this was, Mark Stutzman did this, and he went through, I think, 8 rounds of pencil sketches, getting tighter and tighter. Little details you can't really see, but in the front of one, there's crows picking at the gore that's fallen out of the body that's been beheaded, like every little detail. And then when we got to, I think, the 7th pencil sketch, the publisher said, I don't know where to look because it's all one color. But we were so far along, we just had him finish it anyway, showed her how beautiful it was, and she said she still didn't like it, so fine. So then we decided, how about a sort of pulp western aesthetic? It would give us a little more room for the type. That was the other thing. They wouldn't give an inch. I said, on Abraham Lincoln, we had one guy. So can we just have the 3 kings? Sure. Well, but we also need the camels. And you also have to have Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And you got to make sure the North Star is in there. Like, they wouldn't let us have anything to take away. So it had to have all the elements. So then Michael Kelch did the 2nd set all the way to the end. It was gorgeous. Look at all that copy space. And then it still doesn't work. All the time we're fighting about the title, too. Finally, after this 2nd illustration gets scrapped, they agree to change the title, and they change it to Unholy Night, which is better, but it still doesn't tell you anything about the story. So at that point, we're trying to sort of think of something else we could do, and Mad Men was very much in the visual vernacular, that opening, which then reminds you of the Anatomy of a Murder poster and all the Saul Bass stuff. So we thought, how about that? Saul Bass is perfect, loose figures, basic settings. So we hired heads of state, who came up with a bunch of really great concepts. They took the ball and ran with it, like all kinds of different elements. They still have everything we need, but they've managed to make space around it. And we got a really positive response to the last one on the lower right. It's got everything you need. I also love how the North Star is also a sword. It's a sort of, there's all kinds of things going on, those creepy dead eyes. And the final was great, too. We printed it on uncoated stock, 3 flat inks. It looked really like it had been stamped on there. It really stood out on the shelf. And of course, you still need to make use of the back to put something amusing, or at least something that feels like a reward for turning the book over. And I thought they did a really nice job with the positive and negative space, the blood trail. And then the problem is, 2 days after the book went on sale, they decided the numbers weren't there, wasn't selling, at Easter. And so 2 days after it came out, the editor came by my desk and was like, oh yeah, so just so you know, we're going to totally repackage for the trade. And you know how normally it comes out a year after the hardcover? Well, this one's going to come out 6 months from now.
So they can make Christmas.
So they can make Christmas. That was their one concession, was that they wanted to make Christmas, which gave me 2 months. So the editor and trade paperback publisher came over to my desk to have a sort of a rap session, brainstorm. And item after item they listed as ideas. And I literally pulled out a comp that we had already done that looked just like it. So they were like, how about this? You mean this? Yeah, I guess it doesn't work. Well, what about this? I have that too. Oh, yeah, you're right, it doesn't work. Anyway, finally they decided that, in fact, they were going to go back to an illustration, not one we already had, I'm not sure why, but they decided to sort of start over. And this was Tim O'Brien, thank you for doing this for us. Beautiful, eerie, atmospheric. It's everything they wanted. I particularly like the proto-baby Bjorn that the guy has, where he's holding the baby Jesus. Also, it's an excellent example of where you want the title from the old book almost as large as the title of this book. They kept saying, make it as big as you can make it. And, of course, we wanted the wraparound again. My favorite part being this severed leg, like, right up front. But for the Walmart set and the more squeamish retailers, we had to cover that up. So I tried to make the panel ghosty, so you could, if you really looked, you could see. But and the next and most recent Seth Grahame-Smith book was a return to his roots, his more successful roots. Is a sort of vampire's history of the 20th century. It has a character from Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. He's seen it all. It gave us a lot more photographic opportunity. We wanted something slightly more contemporary, but not so new. We didn't really want color photo. We wanted something good. One of the first comps I came up with was actually a sailor at a VJ Day parade, like blowing a horn, his hat all askew. And then it was Anne who reminded me of this, of the Eisenstadt, the famous Eisenstadt photo of the kiss in Times Square. So I remember, and she pointed out, is he kissing her or is he draining her blood? Well, can it be both? So, and I was like, I'll comp it up. But in the cover meeting, I remember saying, like, don't get married to it because we don't know if we have the rights. Well, of course they got married to it. And the good news was that Getty had it and they licensed it. The bad news was they were not going to license it to us. And then I said, well, what about, can we pay a fee to pay an homage to it? No, you can't do that either. So then we had kind of alerted them to the fact that we wanted to do this. And then we were going to fake it. So we hired Scott Nobles, and we tried a bunch of different things. We had different uniforms. We tried different poses. But in the end, legal kept saying the more different it is, the better off we'll be. And the publisher kept saying, the closer we are to the original, that's what we want. So in the end, to her credit, the publisher was like, I don't care, let's risk it. And we got a beautiful cover, but nobody ever made any legal claims. So we sort of won. Hopefully. Nobody will make any. I know, don't tell anyone about this book because we don't want to be sued. And then again, this beautiful, Scott Nobles shot our nurse model and then composited her into this beautiful photograph of I think it's actually where they used to deliver the New York Times from. There were trucks in all these little bays. But that was relatively successful, and I think it worked as a package as a whole. And from The Last American Vampire to America the Book by The Daily Show guys. This one was technically before my time. I think it might have even been a Warner book. It might have been before. Yes. Okay. And had nothing but positive things to say about Pentagram. Pentagram and The Daily Show guys worked great together. Pentagram worked great with us, getting us what we needed. It was basically supposed to look like an old civics, like a high school civics textbook. So it was full of infographics and tables and charts, very simple, very clear, a lot of Illustrator, a lot of put together like these little fake letters. It did very well, and so 6 years they decided to do another one. And this one, I think, it's not biology, it's really supposed to be, the way it's described, I think, right, A Visitor's Guide to the Human Race, is after we're all dead, when the aliens come and take over, they can refer to this book to see what life was like And we thought, no problem, Pentagram will do it again. You know, they've done it before, no sweat. Just follow the pattern. But it ended up being much more complicated than the first book had been. And so things just got really unwieldy. The demands were higher. They wanted very specific stuff. So Pentagram was doing it, and we just jumped in to try to help them where we could, used our stable of photographers to take pictures of model makers. And Anne's daughter posed as a model, the model of adolescence. And
We styled it.
That's right. But yeah, so I think it came out really well in the end. It took a lot of work, but we sort of all came together and managed it well in the end. The worst part for me of working on it was this particular spread, which was just having this real up close on your big beautiful Mac monitor was not easy. And luckily in the end, Alan Ayers did most of the heavy lifting as far as the retouching went. Shirley Green was the saint who shot it, and she told me later, she was like, I have never had to ask a model beforehand if they have natural pubic hair. Because they wanted a guy who looked like a normal guy, but a lot of models who are willing to pose naked don't have natural pubic hair, so we did the best we could. And the old guy, Bernie, he was a breeze. He was fantastic. And right after we published, I got an email from Brian, is the name of the model, the younger model, and it read sort of like a letter home from camp in the 8th grade. It was like, Dear Liz, how are you? I am fine. I just have a question about the work we did. I feel like a joke is being made, but is it a joke at my expense? Thanks, Brian. And I was like, and I explained to him that no, the idea was that he was supposed to be, if not the ideal male specimen, a sort of, this is a real person, and then the idea was that Larry King, as old and decrepit and nasty as he was, owed all of his success to his gigantic penis. So, and they were like, we just want to put them together so people know why that is. And then I think at least partly on the success and possibly on a good word from Jon Stewart, we got the Colbert books, which Anne oversaw. Stephen Doyle and Doyle Partners did them. I think he and Stephen Colbert probably had a great relationship. The stuff is beautiful.
At one point, they just,
Yeah, at one point they just went off on their own and had a good time and came up with this beautiful product. I think the America, again, is in the back. They, even with all the three-dimensional photos they shot, like there weren't any real snags. Like it just went really, really smoothly. And another great collaborator we've had the pleasure to work with, Amy Sedaris. Anne also handled these. I can only imagine Anne and Amy Sedaris in a room together. Just people mistaking them for each other, that kind of thing. But I remember Anne has told the story more than once about how they were going over pictures together, and Amy was sort of yaying and naying, and she came across one and sort of, like she liked it at first, and then she said Lucille Ball and crossed it out. And it was this sort of insight, Anne has pointed out, it was an insight into how comedians recognize and foster their own sort of unique brand. So, like Amy Sedaris knows who she is, and she wants to be Amy Sedaris. That's the point. One thing she did not know was that when you're shooting whipped cream, you should actually use shaving cream because it has a much higher melting temperature. So this was supposed to be an homage to Whipped Cream and Other Delights, the album cover by Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass Band. But she brought whipped cream, and as you can see, it all sort of melted very quickly as she put it on her body. But in a way, I think the failure works, because I feel like that's a little her thing. It's like, whatever, is close enough. And it's hilarious. And she's just got like a beard of sprinkles, and it's all over the place. It's fantastic. She definitely commits. I don't think she has a problem committing. Another woman who definitely knows her brand is Chelsea Handler. Anne and Chelsea sort of came up with this idea. They both liked it. I think it was Michael Greco shot it. And Anne was saying they actually cut the rag top on this other car, which seems crazy to me, but they did. They did the whole shoot. It was beautiful. But when Anne started comping stuff together, Chelsea admitted that they weren't her favorite, and that really there was a set that had been taken by a photographer named Jack Guy earlier in the year, these pinups that she really liked. That's what she really wanted to use. And she particularly liked the one on the lower right, which is great, except that in-house they felt like it was a little too much to have Chewy Bravo literally under her skirt looking up. And Anne said, it's a quick fix. Hired a guy to shoot her dog Chunk, and he lit it perfectly and shot it so the dog looks like he was there the whole time. Type readability an issue, but Anne threw on a little fluorescent ink, a little thin stroke, and suddenly you could read over all the neutrals and the black and the white. Her next one was about her travels around the globe, including Asia and Africa, just sort of all these amazing places. And around that time, Molly Janish from Agency MJ had come in and brought this elephant car wash, was a sample from her photographer James Quantz Jr., which made Anne think about the book, and she started talking. And then Molly said, oh, it's like that, if you put her in an evening gown, it'll be like the Irving Penn shot of Dovima with the elephants. And so a concept was born. Chelsea loved the idea, and in fact, I think, was willing to be just shot into the car wash image. But since the book was about travel, we decided an airport baggage claim, or either hailing a taxi outside an airport or airport baggage claim made more sense. And of course, because he shoots these beautiful, wide panoramic shots, we wanted to use on the back. And he was great with the detail. I think the meerkats under her, that Chunk is sort of looking at, I think that was the last edition. But he kept adding things and taking things away until it was this sort of perfect balance of things. Then there's one of my favorite authors to work with, Dimitri Martin. Not least of all because he basically does it himself. He does a lot of his comedy has to do with his illustrations and his drawings. So I wait to see what he wants to do. He turns it in. I might I might ask him to re-letter a word if something's unclear. I'll shift the placement around. But basically he tells me, I get the stuff, I get to credit myself as a designer, but he's done it all. And in this one, actually, we were still proofing, so he had sent this in as his initial sketch, which we loved because it was very loose. He knew he wanted to make it much tighter, but he was, I think, in the middle of the manuscript. And we said, well, do you mind if we use this as a sales proof so they can sell with it? He said, that's fine. So we actually had some flats, some press proof sheets. And we won a TDC award, despite the fact that it was never actually seen on the book, and it doesn't actually have any typography on it anywhere. But we were very pleased that it won because we liked it. We liked it too. And then his next one, point your face at this. I originally laid it out so that the figure was off to the right and the face was pointing at the title. And Dimitri was like, that looks great, but can you put the title at the top of the page because I have something else in mind? And that's what he had in mind. And he was right, because butts are funny. And everybody likes a surprise butt. And his latest one, this is not final yet, he's still writing it. I know that he wants each little illustration to line up with one of the stories. But I also found out that he did the whole thing on an iPhone app, so we're not sure he can output it as high-res. But he said that if he had to, he could probably do it with pens and pencils. So we'll see. This was a similar situation where Emily Flake is a New Yorker cartoonist. She also happens to be a close friend of mine, so I was super excited to work on this, not only because I got to work with a friend, but again, because she would do my job for me, and I didn't have to do it. This was the first one she sent in. Her first success was with a four-frame comic called Lulu 8-Ball. And she's very wordy. A lot of her humor is in this sort of long writing. So this was the first one she did. I wanted to leave it this way, but I understand, you only have a second to get them to pick it up off the shelf. So we went with something a little simpler. And I think it still makes it still has the right amount of impact. And that made sales happier and it made editorial happier. It gets the point across. This one also gets the point across in as much as the subtitle certainly makes one take pause. Because if anyone knows Colin Quinn, they know he's not the person who's going to solve race relations in America. But he must have, because that's what he says he did in his book. Ross McDonald did this illustration for us, and I fell in love with him doing this because he was so funny. He was funny and chatty and interested and interesting, and also he did his job really well and with no complaint. And when you have to describe a lot of racist depictions of characters and awful stereotypical scenarios that you're asking someone to draw, you kind of form a bond. Like when I was trying really hard to very diplomatically describe the Asian squat. I was like, sometimes when guys who happen to work in Chinese restaurants go outside the kitchen door for a while, And then when he was like, oh, yeah, you mean, and they like squat down and they smoke a cigarette and they've got little paper hats on? And then we both felt horrible about ourselves. But we knew what we were talking about. And, it felt good to reach that point. And here we come to the last book. Possibly the last book I'll ever work on. This book is hilarious. It made me laugh, but the process of it made me cry. I have never experienced as long and awful and drawn out an approval process as this one required. This I did within 2 or 3 weeks of the book being launched because it's focus, and you got to have covers even though the book's not coming out for 18 months because you got to sell it in. So one of the chapters I got, there were 3 or 4 chapters available. It was a hilarious thing called Poodles versus Wolves, where she breaks women down into 2 categories, the author. Poodles are the women who are effortlessly elegant. They don't even have to be beautiful, but they sort of always seem feminine and appealing, and every man wants them and every woman wants to be them. And wolves, among whom the author counts herself, buy their underwear in a 3-pack at the Walgreens. They put on mascara because they think they're supposed to, but mostly it's 6 years old and it's a little bit dry and they just don't know what they're doing. But one of the things she says is that poodles are so elegant and classy, which is why no one can ever picture a poodle without a beret on its head. And then I found this beautiful vintage Bettman archive photo, and the look in this dog's eyes, it was like, oh, it was so perfect. But everyone in-house fell in love with it. Fell in love with it. The editor didn't want to share just one cover, which I understand. So I did a few more, took them into cover meeting. They all got scrapped. Did a few more, took them into cover meeting. They got scrapped. And then people start saying, we have a cover. Why are we even doing this? Editor says, I don't want to just show one, because what if she doesn't like it? Okay, try a few more. Phase and phase of trying. Why are we doing this? We have one we like. So it wasn't until 6 or 8 months later that they showed it to her, and guess what? She didn't like it. So then we had to go back, and people still really liked the poodle idea, but she hated the poodle idea because it had taken us so long to share this with her that she was against it forever. But we still kept trying to get it in. Then the editor left, and a new editor came on. There was just so much back and forth. Then she said, because she wanted it to be classy and we wanted it to be funny, and we couldn't seem to figure out a way to do both. I think we did, but she always thought our funny was too funny, and what she wanted wasn't funny at all as far as our people were concerned. Then she said she really liked Aziz Ansari's book and Jay Shaw. So I looked up the guy who'd done it, Jay Shaw, got in touch. He said, I'd love to work on it. That's what happened with Aziz's book, apparently. They were having a real hard time. We hashed it out. A week later, we had that cover. So she was thrilled. We were thrilled. Then that went on for a couple of months. He worked over Christmas. We thought we had one, and then 3 weeks into polishing that one, sales was like, we never said that we liked this. So that was completely scrapped. He was let go and took over from me, thankfully, because I was losing my mind. She sort of decided she was running point on it, and then people in the department were trying stuff. We hired a few other people. Then we brought Jay Shaw back on, and this is the final cover. And I actually really like this. I think in the end, the first stuff I had read did feel very whimsical and funny and ha-ha. And by the end, when I was rereading some of it, and the introduction made it clear that it was much more of not a manifesto necessarily, but much more of a sort of, fuck you, patriarchy. Like, I'm going to be the kind of girl I want to be, and I'm not going to worry about what you say I'm supposed to be. But she's very happy with it. I'm happy with it. Our company is fine with it. I honestly don't know how much they like it or don't like it, but I sent it to production this week, so I don't have to think about it again. But you might be asking yourself, like, it's funny because they don't seem that different. They're both sort of single portrait, full bleed portraits. It's a little bit, they're each kind of monotonal, gray on one and sort of pinky on the other, and they're a little bit vintagey. How many iterations could there possibly have been? So I'm going to share all of them with you, but it's going to go quick. These are just the ones I worked on.
My head hurts.
And that's a lot, right? It's not all of them. There's still more. Oh, and there it is. And that's how we got to now, right? Now it's a matter of hoping and praying that it sells enough that we don't have to start over for the trade paperback. And if anybody saw anything in there that they want to use, it's all still available. So give us a call at Grand Central Publishing. We'll see what we can work out. Thank you.
Questions? The three of you.
Oh, okay.
Questions? The man in the back.
You kind of answered this in a way, but in these iterations, I think anybody who's working on a book cover and looking over does some projects to the point of exasperation like that. How do you manage that with, like, for one thing, why didn't the author see that for 6 months? Like, I feel like I'm creating covers sometimes that nobody ever sees ever. Like, did you ever show it to them? And I'm not freelance, so I'm not seeing what you guys go through, so I'm curious what it's like on your end dealing with editor authors. And also, can you figure out a way to just charge for every iteration?
Yes. Oh, I think you should charge. I agree. We spent a lot of money on that one too. So,
Cover costs $10,000.
right.
More.
No, I think one of the things I've sort of we've declared recently that the cover approval process is officially dysfunctional. So, I just say that now. So, to my publisher, and she's like, oh, it's like, I don't know what the solution is, but since I've just declared it's dysfunctional, I think something could come out of it. But one is like cost, time effectiveness, Like we tend to aim to please. So, in a small way, I think we approach this like, okay, let's like try to fix this, and but and I love this book too. You'll grow out of it also, but yeah, it's dysfunctional, and there wasn't that much difference, and also things like we can't not show the author something, and when people come to the table to look at our cover, oh, don't send that to set. We could have like 8 things, and they want to show 1 or 2 to the author. I'll go no. The author wants to be involved too. So, I keep when we shared this with her. A few weeks, we hired a few people like Jenny Caro and Nancy Harris-Rumi and Alan, Thomas Allen.
That's
Allen,
right, Thomas Allen.
And
Hall of
then
Interest.
everyone in staff worked on it, okay? So at one point, I think we had about 75, 80 covers, and I said, come on down. I said, look at this. I said, look what we've done. I spread them all on. I said, can I send the bulk of this to the author, please? And they're like, okay. Could we get rid of this one? I'm like, okay. So I sent 67 to the author. And then we were engaged in a conversation.
Yeah, and then we had a conversation.
And in the end, it came down to, no, she was like, she liked about 12, and then narrowed down to, and then she was down to 2.
Yeah.
One of them was that Jenny had. And that was even a similar thing, because they really loved this one that Jenny did. They had little lips with braces on them, and it was really cute. But that was funny, so they liked that. But I understand that, having read the book, like, oh, she's so funny, but she is really just insightful, I think. So, anyway.
Where do you stand philosophy-wise as a designer solving a problem with going with your initial instinct for a creative solution versus obviously what I see here, these multiple comps? I mean, again, my training was maybe when you're younger, you go through all these multiple comps, but as you get older and you kind of discover sort of your style or your theory, don't you just sort of, isn't your first instinct for a solution often the best one versus these multiple comps? Doesn't that create just more, like too many choices and too many?
I think if it was up to a single person's philosophy, mine or yours or whoever's doing the design, that makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, if that's what you're going to do, then you might go, oh well, I did my 5. These are the ones that are good. If you want something else, then someone else has to do it. And when you're in the department, it's like you just got to keep working. And like Anne pointed out, right now the approval process is dysfunctional, and in particular, sales is being real shits.
We had a
And they
bad,
will say, I mean,
we had a bad year with Amazon.
Yeah.
And you know,
And
so
so they're all
I
very
knew this was
skittish.
coming. I prepped some people, you
but
know.
so it's not, and
That
they're
like
not
so
saying
this
stuff
is what
like-
was wrong, you know,
they're not
covers.
saying, you know, I feel like we're not reaching the audience. They're coming back with comments like, ugliest cover, big fail. I'm sorry. And so
And that's
Yeah,
pretty
like that's-
recent. I just started to say like the past 9
yes,
months or so because there was some
and I think
shifts.
you're right. I forget that they got spooked by Amazon and they're freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, well, you also with that one, I really liked my first comp. But when I started rereading the book, I was like, oh, the book that was sort of pitched to me has changed. So it actually does require a sort of a different attitude. But yes, there was many points in there where when I would do 25 comps and they would all get shut down and the author would never see them.
Yeah.
In fact, there was one time, I don't know if you saw some of the mannequin shots. I think I did 10. And in-house editorial, there were 4 that they thought were okay. So we sent 4. The author was like, these aren't any of the things I asked for. So the editor, without asking, thankfully, was like, well, here's the other ones she did that we weren't allowed to show you. She was like, oh, these I like. So it was also the perfect storm of the author and sort of publisher editorial consistently liking the opposite thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, oh, I kind of like that. It was like, this is what we love. I hate that. Here's what I like. No, we're not doing that. How about this instead? Nope. Okay. Like it was at every turn. And then even when the first time I routed the mechanical, like the whole jacket, I got it back from the publisher that said, no, I don't think so. Because it was very simple. And I knew that the author had actually chosen it. There was a simple one and a less simple one. She'd chosen the simple one. Jamie was like, no, it needs to be more complicated. So it's like, and at that point, the author needed to yes every single thing we did. So it was a lot of back and forth. But like I said, it went to production. Turn on.
I think the publishing house normally like to work as a kind of, they are Buddhists. They don't believe in the final. They believe in the process.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Even when it's printed,
Yeah.
it never ends.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
the
it's
picture
true.
had
That's
funny.
true.
Say, It's
So
not
true.
final. It's not final until it's in reprints. Even when it's final. Like Henry, wasn't it Little Children?
Yeah.
Wasn't final. Even when it was final.
Yeah.
You gotta redo it. Sorry. Yeah, it's very Buddhist.
Is Amazon offering design criticism, or when you say you have a bad year with Amazon, you mean just
No, we had a bad year with Amazon because of a deal that we had nothing to do with covers. That you know, we were the first to come out of that lawsuit, and they had the models and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not a lawyer, but anyway, so that was difficult to use, and it impacted our sales because you couldn't pre-order our books. And actually, Amazon gives us like no feedback about covers, and in fact, it came up because we're getting so much feedback from B&N lately. One of the publishers did say today, said, "What are they doing for us?" Like, you know, so we're starting to dismiss it because I've been getting like these ridiculous emails, and but B&N is the only one that really Cecily weighs in a lot, but she hasn't in the past, so I think it has to do with the selling. You know, who's ever selling in is buying. You know, so. But we're going to change that. Anything else? We're done. All right. Thank you, everyone. So much fun to celebrate.